the former Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Professor Ernest Okoroman. Please put your hands together for me.
The Vice Chancellor of Rivers State University, Professor Ernest Okobule, and my former boss, and still my boss anyway, the Dean of the Faculty of Education, Professor Emeritus, Professor W.A. Amerule, Professor Eric Amadi, former Quality Assurance Director, keynote presenter number 2, Professor Luo, the head of Department of Educational Management and other heads here present, or the Dean, former Dean of the Faculty of Education, Okoye, Professor Vipene Joe, other heads of departments and directors here present, members of the Department of Educational Management, and members of the Faculty of Education who are here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I want to acknowledge the fact that the appointment of my humble self as the keynote presenter or speaker is deeply appreciated and will not be taken for granted. The confidence reposed in me to perform this assignment is highly appreciated. I want to thank all of you. I want to say that the National Association of Educational Administration and Planning, NAEAP, Rivers State University branch, has done a wonderful work for putting this first hybrid conference together. It's a platform that has brought a lot of scholars together to benefit from researches that have been conducted by several people, and this will benefit a lot of persons in this faculty and in this university and other places, and international hybrid conference. And I want to say that it's a good job that you have done. I want to congratulate our university, congratulate the Faculty of Education, particularly the Department of Educational Management for the vision. The theme of the conference, which is Sustainable Development in Education, is very timely, and I want to say that we shall all benefit substantially from it. My topic is Artificial Intelligence and Educational Development in Nigeria, the sustainability concern. Education is the foundation of development of any society. And where education is not properly in focus, then of course society will not develop properly. I recall that my inaugural lecture number 44, which was presented on the 22nd of March 2017, focused on policy implementation. And my concern was the fact that we have had a lot of policies, formulated in Nigeria educational policies, but we have failed at implementation. And that each time we try to implement the policies, we have ended up with a lot of issues. And so our educational system has not advanced as expected. We have not experienced sustainable national development because we have not been able to have sustainable educational development. And when we talk about sustainable educational development, we are inferring to education that can sustain quality education that can be sustained at all levels, that can sustain quality power delivery, sustain road infrastructure delivery, health services delivery, good economy, food security, industrialization, quality infrastructures, good standards of living. That's what we're talking about. Sustainable educational development. Morals, good moral standards. And then, of course, when we have all of this, then we will be able to achieve sustainable national development. Sustainable national development. We have to have sustainable educational development that can guarantee the things I have mentioned now, and then of course that will dovetail into sustainable national development. And because we have not succeeded in these areas, and because we have not been able to achieve sustainable national development, we can see how our country is wobbling. Our country is wobbling, and we are known for a lot of negativities all over the world. We are hosting the world's highest poverty. We are hosting all kinds of corruption. The highest corruption in the world, country in the world is Nigeria. We are hosting the highest level of poverty, of deprivation, of hunger and everything, because our educational system has not been sustainable to produce a sustainable national development. And so that's what we are going through. But I want to take you through why we have not been able to achieve sustainable educational development that could dovetail into sustainable national development. The educational system that we have had over the years. And I want to do that by giving you some of the information about the development of education at the primary school level, at the secondary school level, and tertiary institutions, which have culminated in what we are seeing today, experiencing today. We know that the Ashby Report of 1960, which spelled out the importance of education in Nigeria, gave us the clue as to what we could do about education to be able to develop sustainably. And the founding fathers of education at the time, such as UKJ in 1966, talked about education as the foundation of development, and that investment in education is very, very important, is key to national development. And when this investment is done properly, and reasonably, of course, the nation will grow. But when it is not properly, done, it is not adequately funded, it is not adequately addressed, then of course we have a problem with the system. And of course, the erudite scholar, Professor Claude Ake of blessed memory, talked about education as the way, the process of training ourselves or training individuals to be able to give their best. And that was about 1988 that was said. A lot of other observations were made about education, but today, despite all of these observations, we have seen that our educational system has continued to wobble, unfortunately. And you see, of course, the first measure or step taken to address primary education or basic education was in 1955 and 1957 by the Western regional government as well as the Eastern regional government. And then, of course, this was followed by Obasanjo in 1976 when he launched the Universal Primary Education UBE 1976. And of course, when he was head of state, and he saw the importance of education, and that program was launched. Unfortunately, the measures that were supposed to be taken to ensure the success of this program were not taken. And so it collapsed within a short time. Well, fortunately for Obasanjo, he became president in 1999 and relaunched this program as the UBE, Universal Basic Education, in 1999. To give it a second try. And this was because Obasanjo realized the importance of basic education. The Constitution spells out the importance of basic education, education generally, of course, for the citizens of Nigeria. And so he did that and cautioned that we should not go the same way to fail again, as in the case of UPE. But unfortunately, the advice taken, especially with respect to implementation. I must tell you that the problem we have is that the problem of implementation. The problem is not the problem of policy formulation. We have had a lot of good policies all over the years, but implementation, that's what I refer to as policy somersault. At the point of implementation of this policy, there is a sudden change, a sudden retrospection or regression as the case may be, and then of course all that we are spelled out to be done to ensure the success of these very fine policies, were abandoned, and so the system failed. So the UBE failed despite all the provisions. The UBE Enactment Act of 2004 spelled out what to be done, some of the sanctions for those who failed to implement the policy. But all of that were jettisoned. Governments were supposed to ensure and provide basic education. And of course, when we say basic education, we're talking about primary education and the junior secondary level of education. The Constitution of Nigeria, Federal Republic of Nigeria, has also emphasized on that, and the UBE Act of 2004 emphasized on this. And of course, unfortunately, the government has failed, terribly, and there has been no sanction. The Act did not provide any sanction for government that have failed. Governments were supposed to access, provide their own counterpart funding, to access the funds for the universal basic education. But a lot of the governments are not doing that, and there's no sanction against them, of course, and so they are having their ways. Parents were supposed to ensure that they sent their children to schools, to primary schools, and junior secondary schools. And of course, a lot of the parents who do not have jobs and the resources to send their schools failed. And we have millions, in fact, about 15 million children, roaming the streets. And nobody has sanctioned the parents. But of course, the government cannot even sanction the parents, because government has failed in its own duties to provide employment, for parents. And if parents do not have employment, how will they send their children to school? And of course, when the Act, the 2004 Act, UB Act, provide that parents who fail to send their children to school will be punished. Well, first of all, at the first instance, 2,000 naira they pay, a 1 month jail term. At the subsequent, infractions, they will pay 5,000 or 2 months imprisonment, or both, as the case may be. But government does not have the guts to arrest parents, millions. Why would they keep them? What justification? And so you see, these are some of the issues that we are talking about, and that cannot sustain education, sustainable education for sustainable national development. If you don't have sustainable education, you cannot have sustainable national development, because it's education that powers the nation. So that's where we are. And of course, you go on from the primary school level that has failed and up to now. Although the UBE is still in progress, standing on one leg, and we're just managing, because we don't seem to have any alternative for now. And so you go on to secondary education. The same thing has happened. Of course, secondary education generally dovetails from the colonial period and all of that, when the National Council of Educational Research and Education, discovered that the system we are operating, the secondary education we are operating, is not indigenous, was imported from Britain and all of that. And so it was not giving us the result that we expect for development and all of that. And so there was a conference, the National Curriculum Conference, organized in 1969, to fashion out a way out, And this conference dovetailed into a national seminar in 1973, where the first national indigenous policy was formulated, the 6334 educational system, which is known as the National Policy on Education. And you see, of course, that policy provided for 6 years in primary education, 3 years junior secondary, 3 years senior secondary, and 4 years university education. And that's how it went. Of course, unfortunately, this is it, but one of the highlights of this policy is that the 3 aspect of the policy was supposed to ensure that there is practical input, that our children are given some practical skills, especially at the first three aspects of the policy. So those who want to go to trade school or technical schools can be sealed out from the first 3 years, and then those who want to go to grammar schools will also could do so. But this program was implemented just for a few years and abandoned. And so what we have, from the 5 years program that we used to have, where we attended secondary school for 5 years, before the 3 policy came on board. And so what we're having now is that 6 years have replaced the 5 years and not bringing any value to the children that are receiving this education for 6 years. And so what we have is 3 years of formality, and they go to write examination, get certificate that has no value. The certificate they get after 3 years, the junior school certificate, certificate they get after 3 years does not have any value, no meaning at all. And then, of course, automatically they progress to the senior secondary school for another 3 years. And of course, that is the one that has value, because the certificate, the senior school certificate examination is written and they get the certificate and go to universities, polytechnics, colleges of education, and all of that. You see, so we are now using 6 years to achieve what a lot of persons achieve in 5 years. We are wasting. The children are just wasting 1 year. You understand? You know, so that's what. And of course, that is because the policy, again, the policy was good, but not implemented as expected. So that's what we're having. That's the problem that we're having. And you see, then of course, we move on to tertiary education. These are the reasons. I'm giving you the reasons why we have not been able, and we cannot achieve sustainable national development. We're talking about sustainable national development, because you cannot have that without sustainable educational what? Development. You cannot have sustainable national development without sustainable educational development. Because education influences whatever we do. Any country that is achieving something has a good educational system. And so that's what we're talking about. And so you move on to tertiary education. The same thing has happened. Of course, the Constitution as Section 18, subsection 3C, provide that government has a right and power to establish tertiary education, tertiary institutions, universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education, and all of that. And as we speak, we have about 264, universities, 205 colleges of education, and 101 polytechnics that we have in this country about that. Of course, they are establishing almost every year. This is the research that was done before yesterday. Perhaps today they have already established more, if the figures don't, So that's what we are talking about. And so we have all of this. And the tertiary education is also encumbered with a lot of management factors that have made university education non-functional, properly non-functional, as the case may be. And you see some of those factors that we have. We have inadequate funding and our tertiary institutions, universities, and of course the Vice Chancellor is there. He confirmed that no money is coming. Money is not coming, for him to run this university, and the other Vice Chancellors and the provosts and rectors of colleges of education and polytechnics. They don't have the funds and all of that. So that is, there are also some other policies that have encumbered the function of tertiary institutions. Of course, when I delivered my inaugural lecture in 2017, I mentioned some of those factors. The NAEAP is a problem to university education, particularly university education. The NAEAP interferes with all kinds of things. They brought CCT mass and all kinds of things, to encumber us. And at the end of the day, we don't achieve anything. Okobukola is there, one of the agents of NAEAP, to come up with all kinds of things, because he's a consultant, to NAEAP and of course the federal government. And then he comes up with a lot of policies and makes his money and all of that. Then of course, there are some policies unknown to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that have been formulated in Nigeria that have brought low, reduced the standard or quality of university education or tertiary education. You have, things like quota system, you have the quota system, you have discriminatory fees, you have backward factors and all of that. In which case, admissions, some places or percentage of admission places are reserved to accommodate these policies that are unknown to our Constitution. And that has become a problem, And so a lot of people who are not qualified are admitted into universities, because either they are coming from the north and say, oh, we are disadvantaged states, they are backward states and all of that. And so who made them backward? Who told them to be backward? They have been in Nigeria all along. And so you see that that's a wrong policy, backward, states and all of that. And so the cutoff point for backward states could be like 100 points or 102 or something as the case may be. And they admitted. And then some other people who scored 250 are not admitted, because they are not from backward states and all of that. So these are wrong policies that have made our educational system not to function properly, to give rise to, national sustainable development, national sustainable development. And so some of these things are there. But so now, the question is, what do we do from now? How can we move forward from here? Artificial intelligence has been introduced to us. Artificial intelligence has been introduced to us. And we want to think of exploring and exploiting this idea of artificial intelligence to see whether it can benefit us in education. We know that the main problem of education is the management factor. And the management factor, when we talk about management in education, we are talking of post-course planning, organizing, directing, staffing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. These are the things that leaders do in not only in education, whether it's oil companies and other places. What they do is to effect management. And that is post-corp, which I've talked about. So how can we use artificial intelligence to improve on post-corp? The management strategy in education, how can we do that? And we'll try to explore how that can be done. Of course, artificial intelligence is the ability to perform tasks commonly associated with intellectual processes that are characteristic of human beings. The ability to perform tasks that are usually characteristic of human beings. If you have technologies, you have machines, you have robots, computer-driven robots and all of that can perform the activities that human beings are endowed to perform, and they can do that properly very well, then of course you achieve greater results and greater success. It's also the ability to reason. When you have a computer system, you have a robot, you have a machine that can reason like human being, take decisions like human being, and then of course translate spoken and written language and all of that. And so we now think, we have to consider how this can replace the efforts of human beings. You see, the human beings are so unreliable. Corruption comes through human beings. Human beings, have the tendency, especially in Nigeria, to embark on corruption one way or the other. But if you have machines, you have robots that have been properly trained and equipped to perform the roles that human beings ought to perform, of course, there won't be this corruption. Robots will not take take a bribe, just like human beings and all of that. And so we are thinking about how this can be done. But this is feasible using artificial intelligence to do administrative work, to do what the human beings that have failed to bring about sustainable educational development, sustainable national development. To do that, then we have to also consider the cost implications of applying the application of artificial intelligence in the process of educational management, as the case may be. And we saw that much as this is commendable, it is possible to work it out, but there will be opposition. There are people who will be disagreeable to the adoption application of artificial intelligence. These are people who have been benefiting from the system. Those who are the corrupt people who benefit from the system, when you bring machines and robots and the rest of them to replace their function, they will be very, very slow in accepting such proposal. And of course, you cannot adopt and apply artificial intelligence except the people in position accept to do so. They are the ones to take decisions to adopt or not adopt, and they are there. And so when they know that with their corruption tendencies, they will lose from this kind of, the application of artificial intelligence, they are very likely to oppose it. But the truth is that the cost implication too of adopting an application of artificial intelligence will be very high. And our governments ready for the cost implications of that? Because you need to adopt and apply artificial intelligence, you need to acquire the facilities, the necessary facilities, machines and robots and other things that will make it possible for the application. Do we have that? When the government, we are talking about government inability to adequately fund primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions at this time, they cannot fund them adequately. Will they be able to willing to fund, the facilities, procure or acquire the facilities that are necessary, that will be necessary for the application of artificial intelligence? Then, of course, we also need to know that artificial intelligence will result in loss of jobs, and that is critical. The loss of jobs. If you adopt and apply artificial intelligence in the management of education, the educational system, and any other system for that matter, a lot of persons will lose their jobs. Because you are going to use robots, computer-driven robots, machines and the rest of them to implement these things. And when you do that, a lot of persons will lose it. Will the government in this critical time agree to spend money that is not even available only to make people lose their jobs? And then, of course, more protests for bad governance and all of that. So these are some of the things that we should also consider. Having said all of this, I want to say that Nigeria has a long way to go. We desire to make giant strides. We desire to improve on the system. But who is going to bear the cards? Who is going to bear the card? The system is corrupt. The people are corrupt. Those in charge of the system are corrupt. So what do we do? What do we do? And people say, pray. Have we not been praying in this country? We have been praying and things have continued to go bad and all of that. And I have even said in some fora that God is tired of us. God, because do you know the number of countries in this world that God is overseeing, created and overseen? He's overseeing. God gave us the luck, privilege, gave us blessing, and endowed us with mineral resources to establish us as an important nation in this world. God did that, and we have abused that opportunity. We have abused that opportunity. The country that did not have the kind of resources that we were endowed with, have grown. And so we do not need to bother God again, even though technically we cannot do without God. So I want to say that artificial intelligence is a tool. It's a tool, very important tool that can help us to develop and grow in our educational system, which will bring about national sustainable development. But because we have seen that a lot of persons may not be available or amenable to accepting this idea, I think we need to pray We need to pray. We need to pray hard. Yes. Yes. So listen, we need to pray. We need to pray. The reason that we need to pray consistently and persistently is that arising from the last protest, the just concluded protest, you can see that our leaders are hardening their mind. They are very, very hardened in mind. Despite all the things that happened, the people that were killed and the rest of them. Government did not concede to one point, even one of the points or requests. And so you can see the kind of people that we are dealing with. So when we know definitely that artificial intelligence will help us to get out of the woods, help us move forward, develop sustainable educational process or system that will key into national sustainable development. There will be opposition to it. All stakeholders in this country and have a role to play, and whatever role that we can play, and also help us move forward. And so shall it be. Thank you very much.